content creator or web developer? Or maybe to be more specific, do you want a career in content creation? Or do you want a career that's a little more traditional and work in sort of some offices or some agencies as a web developer? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be tackling today in this episode of the HTML All the Things podcast. And it's just going to be me alongside an esteemed guest, Dylan Israel. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dylan a few weeks ago. He is an engineering manager at ClickUp to discuss his views on web developer careers and content creation. As someone who has had a successful career over the past few years working at not only ClickUp, but also Amazon and PwC, Dylan was also actually running his own podcast among other content creation ventures. So we had a great chat on taking your career seriously, the drive and the grind that creators have to contend with, and much, much more. If you're interested in, potentially getting a job here, potentially getting a job there, should I just create content? Should I make a YouTube channel? Should I write code and go into a more traditional path? This is going to be the episode for you. So let's cut to that interview right after I mention this episode is powered, of course, by CodeRabbit. Go ahead and get yourself some AI-powered code reviews. You can do so via the link in the show description and in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. There's a 14-day free trial, just a 2-click sign up if you have a GitHub or GitLab account, and no credit card required. Again, CodeRabbit, go check out that link. And let's cut to the interview. Alrighty, everybody, we have Dylan on the line here. Before we jump into this loaded episode, Dylan, what's up? What's going on? And what have you been working on?
A lot of everything. I about a year and a half ago transitioned to management over at ClickUp, which is a project management tool, and we have a whole suite of tools. I did see that your show notes here are in Notion. We'll talk about that later. That's a problem. No, it's fine. But yeah.
Yeah, we just actually started this. We in Notion. We were on Google Docs, and it just became like too much. Like it was like sort of like Google Docs is great, but it was sort of like, hey, we need a bit of a process. Like I need to like drag things into folders and stuff like that. It's a little easier on Notion. That's where we started. That's why we started it. But I mean, if you have an alternative, I mean, I'm not married to this. We just started this a few weeks ago. So we'll see.
Listen, I got the hookup. We'll get you a nice trial with all the trims, all the features. It'll be good. But yeah,
sounds good. Yeah, but I wanted to kind of kick off this episode with kind of just jumping into, instead of just jumping right into like, the job stuff and the job market and all that stuff, I wanted to jump into your content creation side. So like, I know that like you've created a ton of YouTube videos. You used to have your own podcast even. You made some courses. You even maintain some popular site pages like W3 Schools. I think I saw on your LinkedIn, the TypeScript section there as well. And so I have a few questions regarding kind of this side of the coin here. And I'll kick it off with this one. So, you used to have your own podcast called Self-Taught or Not, which eventually ended as you and your co-host got jobs at Amazon. So did you create the podcast with the goal of both getting hired, and did you actually have plans to keep the podcast going that didn't end up working out? Or was it like, hey, we got hired, goal complete, and then podcast complete?
Yeah. So by the time I worked at Amazon, I had about 5 years of experience. So I don't recall if I was already doing the podcast. I think I had started it before, and I continued it while working at Amazon. And a lot of it was just Eric and I, Eric Hanchett, my co-host, Program with Eric on YouTube, although I think he just stopped doing content recently. We just kind of would have these talks, and we said, hey, why don't we start a podcast? We had always wanted to do something together. And it was just something like the episodes would be about an hour, but there would always be about 45 minutes of us just bullshitting and just like ranting about life, not even tech. And we actually have an episode or two. He came and visited for a conference. He's now a developer advocate, and he goes around and gives talks about AWS and things like that. And so we actually have a couple episodes that we recorded while we were together, and we were thinking about actually restarting the podcast and doing another season. But the goal was really just to have fun, see if we make a little bit of money, if that's a bonus, and then just kind of try and have a positive impact.
For sure. Like, I mean, there's a lot of kind of benefit, I guess, community benefit, of course, like for devs, where especially if they're self-taught. I mean, it's right in your episode title or your podcast like name. But it's like if you're a self-taught dev, which my business partner Mike and I, we were self-taught for the most part, but like we at least had each other kind of thing. But it's like that's having like a sense of community, having like a show to listen to, having like a forum to go to, something like that is like a great way to kind of check your skills and like not feel like alone where you're like, man, I'm learning this, but like, is this the right, is this the right thing to learn?
Yeah, it's interesting now because I'm doing interviews a couple a week at this point, as we build out our engineering org and stuff like that. And I would say maybe 1 in 10 people, and I haven't done like content creation in probably about 3 or 4 years at this point. It's been a minute, and I'll get, oh, I when I was in uni, if they're like from Europe, they say uni. When I was in uni, I used to listen to your podcast. They're like, "Why'd you stop doing content creation?" I felt, when I started out, I was watching your YouTube videos, and like, so it's a little secret of mine that occasionally people, either that or they're just trying to flatter me. They're just playing up to my ego. Either way, it's working. So keep doing it, people. But no.
Well, that was going to be back to my next question is like, content creation is absolutely something that a lot of people do for a living, full time, part time, whatever. And I was kind of curious, like, was it ever something that you wanted to do full time, or was it always sort of a vehicle to getting a job or kind of just getting out there in the job market so that, should the worst happen, you get laid off or something, that you have, connections?
Yeah, I think at some point, if you enjoy doing it, you always have this like in the back of your head. But that was never really my goal. So I had a buddy who had a YouTube channel, and he was coming over to my house, and we were hanging out. We knew each other for decades at this point, and so like grew up together. He had a YouTube channel, Engineered Truth, that was around like career advice and things like that. And he had just been getting started. It was growing, and I was like, oh, I really like I'm struggling to get my foot in the door. He's like, you should start a YouTube channel. So I just started doing stuff on software to be kind of a unique side project. And that's kind of how I really just enjoy doing it. And eventually, you go and people ask you for mentoring, and then people reach out to you for courses, and some of these opportunities show up, and you evaluate if you want to do it or not. But for me, it was always, how do I grow as an engineer, and how do I have a unique project? And then once I had got a job, it was really about, at some point, when is this paying less dividends than it was before? And that was kind of what ended up stopping it. Is I just got busier. The risk versus reward ratio was like lower. But I just really wanted to I always wanted to be an engineer. Like once I built that first weather app on like Free Code Camp, I knew I wanted to be a software engineer. And it's just like, there's an aha moment. And this was just kind of a means to an end. It's something I enjoy doing though.
Would you say that you've ever had maybe the entrepreneurial push? Like content creator is a bit of an entrepreneurial thing for sure, but would you, because like you mentioned that you've always wanted to be an engineer. Is there ever like a long-term goal or something in the back of your mind where you're like, hey, like I wouldn't mind my own agency or something like that? Because you'd still be an engineer, right? It wouldn't necessarily be a content creator at that point, but it would be something a bit more like traditional, but you're in charge. Like I know a lot of people are like that, especially once they get laid off. They're like, that's it, they become a freelancer or something.
Yeah, I mean, in some regards, right? So like when I was a teenager, like 11, 10, 12, and I think there's a site called half.com. And when like before like Amazon was really a thing, and eBay, you would sell things on eBay, I was always like going to thrift stores and like buying books and selling them and making a profit. It was something actually really nice my mom and I did. And it's like I was building websites and stuff like that. And so I've always been somebody who doesn't mind doing the work. At one point in time, I was streaming on Twitch for like months trying to make some money. And so I don't know, I definitely have that in me. And that's led to some of the content creation. And I could see a world in which that exists, but I'm pretty content with what I'm doing. And like one things I particularly like about my job is they just allow me to have like a ton of ownership. And I'm at a point now where I'm managing 20 engineers, and it's growing, every month at this point. And so it's like you can still have that sort of, and it's really encouraged too, is if you can have strong ownership and strong impact, that you can kind of fulfill that need of moving the pieces around and like driving features forward and development. And so for me, that fills a lot of it. I also like the idea of a consistent paycheck. So like I
Yeah.
having done content creation and understanding the grind of it and the level of effort, I have a lot of respect for people who are like business owners and things like that, where like they are their sole lifeline in a different way than you are as like an individual contributor.
Would you say that you would maybe lean more toward content creation if you had less ownership at your job? Like if you were always like, let's say you worked at like a huge corporation, right? Something like that. And you're kind of like, I'm doing good. I'm getting paid. You mentioned like kind of the steady paycheck. It's like, I'm doing good. I'm getting paid. But like, man, is this a grind, right? Like I'm just sort of here. I'm just doing tickets. It's just almost like a tech factory. I think Mike and I have actually said a couple times where it's like the tickets just keep coming. I don't care what they are. I just kind of do my tickets.
Yeah, and I think that if you feel like you're at a place like that where it's like you don't really have any passion, you're not excited about the work, then it's probably time for a change. That'd be kind of my advice. If I ever felt like that, I'd probably be leaving. And so, like, if you go and look at my history, I have probably about 12 years of work experience now. And of those 12 years, I think I have like 9 jobs. And I've never really stayed anywhere more than a year and a half. And so I've been at my current place for about 3.5 years. So it's really been something where I'm like, I dive in and I get that. So I can fully understand where that's coming from. I think where people kind of maybe make a mistake here is they think that driving things forward on their content creation side. YouTube's a perfect example of this, where like you may not want to do YouTube videos. Part of the reason I stopped doing it is I ran out of things to talk about, and then it would just felt more like a job. Like I used to play a lot of like online video games, like MMORPGs, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, and at some point it stops being fun. You just start being like, okay, today I have to do a raid. Otherwise, I
Right.
won't get the drop that I need. And so these sort of side hobbies, and it actually killed gaming for me when I started streaming, is sometimes you take these things that you love doing and it becomes a job in its own right, and it's not as fun anymore and it loses its appeal.
I mean, I totally get that. Like, I mean, I'm a really avid gamer, but I've always said like, because sometimes I'll think like, man, like maybe I should transition from web development to game development. But then I just start thinking like, oh, like the tickets of like the game servers are down, or like the game, the gamers hate this, and we just went gold, and so now we're gonna have to like stay late again and like redo all this stuff, and I'm gonna be like, man, like maybe I was excited about that feature, and then the gamers hate it, and I don't want to get involved in all that, and like the office politics of it and stuff. I just want to like enjoy a good game sometimes.
Yeah, I think people need to be careful about what their hobbies and passions are and confuse it for a career. It can very quickly become something that you lose taste for, and also like what your goal is in terms of like life. So like right now, my main motivators when I first came into software was poverty and hunger. Like that was like my fuel, right? It wasn't too complex. I got sick of my mom bringing me groceries, sleeping on couches and floors, and like some hard times, and that was something that really fueled me for the first half a decade plus of the content creation like career. And now I'm more balanced. I work very hard at my current job. I do a little bit of side stuff like mentoring, but I'm trying to be a little bit more well-rounded as like I'm a little too well fed now. I have to actually make sure that I don't eat too much as my metabolism slows down. And like luckily the career has provided on the poverty part of it. And then we, try to be more well balanced with health, wellness, social relationships, all that sort of stuff.
I mean, that kind of transitions perfectly into the next kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is, kickstarting your career. It kind of sounds like you kind of bootstrapped, your career, made sure you could provide for yourself and that type of thing. And there's many people out there right now that are trying to kickstart their career as web developers. And it's not as easy these days. It's not easy these days because of the job market. It wasn't exactly easy back in the day either. But I mean, it was easy during that anomaly, which is like the COVID kind of job boom. And so we're kind of in the aftermath of that. And so we're kind of being hit by people had overhired, and there's still layoffs happening from that here and there. But we also have this AI boom as well. And so people are very kind of uncertain on their career and kickstarting it, certainly. So what advice, do you have for someone that's looking to get their first job as a web developer? And it's kind of a two-parter, so I'll say this and we can always tackle it later. But is there any advice that you would have for someone that is self-taught trying to do this, trying to kickstart themselves, versus maybe traditionally taught, like in a school or maybe even like a boot camp or something like that?
Yeah, I would say that no matter what you do, it's going to be hard. So this idea that any of this is going to be easy, regardless of your background, I would just throw that out. Everything to get your foot in the door, because the jump you're going from is being a unproven asset to a proven asset, and yet you have to understand that, like with non-engineering jobs, you might be getting paid 15, $20 an hour, like which depending on your point of reference, maybe a lot. But it's nothing compared to what you'll get paid as an engineer, starting salary. Like it's not unusual for you to make 75,000, $100,000 in your first engineering job today. That's a large ask for a business when you're an unproven asset. And so you have to go and figure out how to prove that. The thing that I would like on my mentoring that I do, one of the number one, I basically work with two types of individuals. Individuals who are in the exact situation you're describing. It's like, hey, I've done the work. I can't seem to land a job. What am I doing wrong? There are three or four things I would hyper focus on, and usually, what ends up happening is you start having it's like if it's like growth, right? I've done a lot of A/B testing and experimentation, and there's part of the funnel, and the thing where people fail in the funnel is the top of the funnel. They can't seem to get anyone to actually look at their stuff. So spending a lot of time on your LinkedIn, your resume, and your GitHub are the three things that you can do, and how to like curate that to catch recruiters' eyes and just even get your foot in the door that way. And consistency by filling out apps every day. I highly recommend only filling out apps that came out in the last 24 hours. And what that ends up doing is you guarantee that they're going to see your resume. Unlike they may already have candidates that have filled that role, it could be a dead application. So you're always going to be one of the first people that. And when I was looking for my first engineering job, I had applied for like 30, 60 days, and I got maybe one call back. And it was always some terrible job. It was always some job that like you didn't actually want. Right. It was like, hey, here's a WordPress shop. I'll pay you $10 an hour, and I'm also like, I particularly remember this one guy who. It was like I don't know if you've ever seen the Trailer Park Boys, but he reminded me. Yeah, he reminded me of was it Rick, the main guy with like the mullet? And anyhow, he sat down. And he had like like one of those TV dinner stands, and he's sitting down, and this is the interview, and he's like telling me, I think I wanted like $15 an hour. He's like, I'll give you 11. And I was like, I can't even like live off that, right? And he had his Bluetooth earpiece in, and he's not even like giving me the respect of the day. He's eating like his dinner straight up while like we're having this conversation. But that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing is really think about the fact that there might need to be a little bit of sacrifice early on. So I'm originally from Southern California. I was willing to move anywhere in the United States other than pretty much New York. I like affectionately joke that if North Korea was hiring, I'd be there. Like I really, it's just because what we're trying, the big gap here is not like, oh, hey, am I going to be here for the next 5 years at this company? It's simply making that jump of being an unproven asset to a proven asset where you go, okay, I have a year of experience. And that is the biggest difference that someone said, hey, I'm going to pay you 60 grand a year or whatever it is. And you provided value. You now have that 1 year of experience. You can now go and enter into a better situation, go back to your home state, go back wherever. But, it's always going to be hard, and it's always going to be a grind, but it's not impossible. I just worked with somebody recently who lost his job, and now he has 2 job offers by simply fixing his resume, simply fixing his LinkedIn, and studying and prepping for those interviews. So when those opportunities show up, he was able to be successful.
That's huge too. Yeah. Cause like you're 100% right. Like, I was just talking to a recruiter actually on our podcast, and he was saying that like one of the platforms that they're using right now is they're not even messing with a resume anymore. Like they're just kind of fixing up people's profiles, or they have a profile on their unique platform and things like that. And like I feel like a lot of people do miss the value of like something just as simple as a LinkedIn, because like that was something that I remember I advocated for because years and years ago, probably almost 10 years ago now. But I did a couple of the talks as like one of the more successful co-ops, I guess, at my college. And I was like, whenever I do something, back in the day, LinkedIn was pretty new. It's like, I write that down. I make sure I put that in my LinkedIn, because then if somebody at the time, there's not that many people on LinkedIn. If somebody searches up, web development, or someone searches up, in my case, it was like BlackBerry Enterprise Server or something like that, I'm going to show up. And it's like that's like keeping your documents kind of like ducks in a row kind of thing is huge, like really, really huge.
Yeah, it's super crucial. And it could be something as simple as a banner. Like one of the first things I do when I review someone's LinkedIn is I was like, hey, like you have this banner. There's there's no value on it. Like you have to think of your resume and your LinkedIn. I might look at your as a hiring manager, I might look at your resume for 10 seconds. That's like a real number. I'm fucking busy, like everybody else.
Yeah.
And like I've assumed that the recruiter has done enough due diligence, and typically they have that. Like if we're doing an interview, it's because they have signed off on it. And so I might glance at it, see if there's certain things that I want to call out or whatnot. But it's the same thing with recruiters. They're looking at your stuff. They're going through hundreds of candidates. And so what they want to see is, are you what I am looking for? Make it easy on them. So in your banner, go and say, okay, cool. Like, what type of engineer are you? I'll use myself as an example. I primarily am a front-end engineer. First thing you would see on my banner, senior front-end engineer. I'd have an icon for JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, Jest, Git. The very first thing is just, am I what you're looking for? Great. Now, instead of getting 10 seconds, you might get a minute. And they'll be like, oh, now I'm interested in this candidate. And it's these small things that you can go make a free banner on Canva will go and infinitely increase your opportunities.
I was just thinking I was going to go and check, but I just remembered my banner is not that useful. My banner is absolutely just a picture of me at a golf tournament. So should probably fix that up. Like, but you're 100% right. It's like someone shows up to my to my LinkedIn and it's like, for you, it's like, hey, like you're a front-end engineer or whatever. Let's say I'm going for the same position. Like someone shows up and is like, why is the Canadian Open here? Like,
yeah. And like it can, once you have 5 years of experience, this or that, you have a couple names on your resume. That's another thing where people kind of struggle with is they don't really necessarily think about what's best for their career long term. They stay placed, they don't grow. They don't think about, company brand value and how to jump through those hoops and being like staying in small businesses and not going to bigger businesses, which you can then get different types of opportunities. Working at a SaaS company is different than working at a web design shop or a small e-commerce company. Even if they're doing several $100 million worth of sales, you're going to have different levels of engineering orgs and how they're established and what's important.
We were actually, like my business partner and I were just talking about that, about how it's going to be much different working in a large company, which will usually have, great opportunities, whatever, but they'll likely have a team for everything. Everything's split up into like 100 pieces or whatever, versus a startup where it's like, yeah, we have 5 teams, but like each team is one person, maybe 2, and it's chaos. And like, could you do the invoicing this week? It's like, what? Depending on how small the actual startup is, it's like that's a totally different experience. And like both can come with great experience, like job wise, but also even good salaries. It's just they're totally different experiences.
Yeah, and that's not to say one is better than the other. I think I mean I have an opinion that I think you should be like going to more established software companies, at least for a point of time. But it is to say that if you are in the same place and your title's not changing, your opportunities aren't growing, you're stagnating, and that's going to impact you. I remember this one individual who worked at 7 years of experience, but he had stayed at this small web design shop and he only knew jQuery, and he's like, I can't get a job that pays me more than $75,000 a year in Southern California. It's because, well, you painted yourself into a quarter. You should have been there 18 months. And if you weren't advancing or, you should go and say, okay, great. Now I'm going to jump over this other company. I don't know anything about React or whatever it is, but I'm going to go learn this. And they have maybe now they have a more established QA process. And you're learning about that. And, you start bringing value. Your expertise as an engineer increases as you go to different places and you have different opportunities. You're going to bring over what to do right and what not to do, which is equally as important. And you're going to learn that at the next place.
What do you think about sort of dedication to the job then? So like one thing I notice a lot of people will do is they'll work their 9 to 5 and then that's it. But then some other people will like work that 9 to 5 and then they'll go at night and start learning. And so like that individual you just mentioned with the jQuery, it's like, I guess if he really wanted to stay at that dev shop, he could have been like, okay, I'll do my side hustles in TypeScript and this and that and the other thing, whatever, all these other different technologies that he's trying to learn some databasing, maybe use SQL, whatever it is. And he would like, learn all that stuff. And like one of the things that my business partner and I talk quite a bit about is we have this like, I don't even know what it is, but it's like, it's almost like we hear like an identity crisis from people where some people say, you know what, like I am a web developer as a job, but I'm not a web developer off the clock. Like I just want to be a web developer 9 to 5, and then that pays for my hobbies and my, my freedoms and this and that. But then other people are like, coding is my life. I love coding. Some people see it as like an art almost, and they code all day, they code all night, they code all weekend. Like what's your thoughts on that? And like, do you think that, because you're mentioning job hopping, so like someone who's just doing the 9 to 5 really could do that, like job hop and get different skills. But do you think that there's like an inherent benefit or like detriment to either of those approaches? Because I know that some people will say, hey, if you're coding all the time, you're going to burn out, whether you're just applying or whether you're learning or whether you're just trying to get a different job, like you're going to burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it depends on where you're at. And I'm a big believer in seasons of life. So, first 5 years of my career, I was probably working 100-hour weeks between content creation and working my normal job. And honestly, I've dated someone for like 8 years, and the last 3 years of it was terrible because I was just burnt out and tired and working a ton. And like, that's probably what killed that relationship. It definitely wasn't my charming personality. But my point being is that, there are different seasons of life, and there's a point where that may make sense for you and it may not. So I think early on in your career is much more understandable saying, hey, I'm doing extra work outside of it, but I'm also looking for that. Like I'm not just doing it to do it. When I advise some of my mentees to grow their skill set, it's for a very particular use case. It's not just, hey, just code outside of work in the same things you're coding and doing the exact same things, and like maybe you'll have some benefits. Like, no, we have a goal here. So what are your goals, right? Engineering's a little bit unique because you can have engineering roles that pay $100,000 and you can have engineering roles that pay $900,000. Like if you go, one of the most gangster things about Netflix is they will let you choose how much stock you want versus how much cash. And so if you go and get a senior engineer role at Netflix that pays, and I encourage everyone to go to levels.fyi, which will have all these big tech companies. So if you want to be in like top 5 to 10% tech companies, they'll be listed on there. And you can really see how the stark difference between making $100,000 and $900,000 is, and everything in between. But at Netflix, they let you choose if you want 900 in equity or you get 900 in cash, which like, my goodness, that'd be fun. But so you can have different goals. Not everyone's very financially motivated. I am. So I've been on the other side of the coin. I'm less so nowadays. And so you can do this for a season of life. No one's telling you to work, 100 hours a week for 10 years. But you could do it for 2 years. You could do it until you go and say, okay, you know what? Going from 75 to 100,000 is a 33% raise. Maybe I can work outside of work, right? Maybe I can go and get this sort of stuff done. And then later on, as the money means less and as the career opportunities are less interesting because you're, maybe you want to start a family, maybe you want to do your own venture, maybe you just, are content. There's nothing wrong with that. You can change your position. And so I really think it's a unique choice based on what your motivation is and what you want out of life in that moment. So both things can be true, and they can be true at different points in time.
What would you say for people who are only single-minded in their motivation? Because like I know you mentioned, you did the free code camp weather app. You wanted to be an engineer, so there's definitely like a passion there. But then you also mentioned like financial motivation, like you wanted to make some money, of course. And we saw a lot of people during like that COVID boom where it was like, hey, easy money, easy money. And some people just don't care about coding. They're just like, I'll just start coding because it's easy money. I'll get hired quick. Can make 75,000, make 100,000, who knows, whatever, just go. And then when that COVID boom, hiring boom kind of went away, the layoffs started. We saw a lot of people who just didn't care about coding, right? They just didn't even give it a second thought short of money. They sort of just disappeared. So like, what's your thoughts on that type of motivation? Like is being just like purely financially motivated like enough? Or are you a person that says like, you know what, you do need to care about code. You do need to care about tech. Like if you're a person that hates tech, like maybe don't just come here because it pays you $250 or whatever.
Yeah, I think ultimately you need to be an adult about your career. Like you need to you need to really think this through. So like the way I got into tech, I like really figured out that I wanted to write software or like made that choice wasn't something based off passion. I went on like the Bureau of Labor and Statistics or the BLS, and like at the time, and at this point we were in 2025, maybe like 2010, five of the top like six were all like computer science, software engineering, web development. Like these are the jobs that had the highest job growth, the highest pay, the most job openings, and I was just like, one thing that was important to me is I wanted to make sure that if I was going to have a career, it would be around, it would pay well, and like I could like there's more growth opportunities down the line. Nowadays, I think it's probably like data science, or it was. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's less so that. Um, but you have to like really think about what it is that you want to do also. And it just happened that as I went more into it, as I found out that I really did love it. But take some control of your life. Like, don't be one of these people that say, "Hey, I'm gonna go take out $100,000 of debt into like a degree that I have no passion about." And even if I do, let's we'll take a liberal arts degree now as an example, where you're like, "Hey, I'm going in all this debt," and the very next question is like, how are you going to pay that question? How are you going to pay that back?
Right,
and
right.
It's like, and it's like, oh, well, we don't think about that. We just like take it out instead. You have to have multi-level thinking. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to go into this and I really despise it. Okay, well, like, I think everyone in their right mind would tell you, like, don't do something that you hate, right? Because you're not going to be successful in anything you do that you hate. Now, if you enjoy what you do and you love what you do, you'll be very successful just naturally, and you'll figure out a way to monetize that. Because you can monetize almost anything nowadays with the internet. Like the joke of underwater basket weaving. I bet there's a guy on Instagram right now weaving baskets, making buku bucks. Like it's just
Yeah.
there's and he's happy doing it, right? So I think a little bit of responsibility, a little bit of like two-level thinking is good. If you're in that position and you're saying, hey, we're too late. Like I've been an engineer for 5 years. It's just a job. I don't particularly enjoy it. Your choice is to say, okay, what's next? What's the exit path? What's the off ramp? I get asked quite frequently, like, hey, if I wasn't doing engineering, what would I do? And like the thought I've come to is I have no background in this at all. Is again, I go to like, well, what is something that I could be a little bit entrepreneurial in? What is something that like I feel like I can be like a one man army? Like one of the great things about being an engineer is like you can kind of be a one man army. Like you can be the guy that like they go and they say, hey, this project's behind, get it out the door. You can have value. And so I would transition to be an electrician. And the way that kind of my brain gets there, having never even done any of that, kind of being afraid of touching electric. So when I'm like installing ceiling fans, is I just think about like what's something that's going to have strong demand, what's something that I could see expanding beyond just me. Like I could start my own business. I start having these thoughts, but you really need to take control of your decisions. So if you're unhappy doing what you're doing, and it's truly the field, there might be time for a change. And you see that a lot actually, where you have people who go and become business analysts or scrum masters or project managers, and they've tried software engineering for a year or two. They either weren't very good or they weren't like it wasn't for them, right? They're like, I'm not going to invest years of my life into this, and so they make a transition. And so I would start thinking about what's next.
What would you say to people, and I don't know whether you'd have insights into this, but this is something I've personally experienced. I have a couple of friends who they really like tech. They talk tech all the time, just like casually, right? At the barbecue. We're not talking work, we're just talking tech. And a couple of those friends are in IT, and one friend in particular is like really into it, like really, really likes it, has worked tons of hours for free for like small IT shops, works at big companies, small companies, does all that kind of stuff. And he came to me like just maybe a few months ago, and he said, like, my wife wants to like get a new house, and I told her we're gonna have to hold off on that because he's like, I might leave tech, and he's like, I hate it now. I don't really like it. I'm burnt out on it, and I'm like, well, it's likely because you worked a whole bunch, but I'm wondering, like, do you have any, I don't know, insights or thoughts on that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to that. Because I remember even a few years ago, like I was talking to my girlfriend, and I was like, there's I kind of have an exit plan with tech, maybe, where I was like, if it gets to if it starts to get too crazy, like if it starts to get to like, hey, we're gonna have one engineer and just have them be on call but not on call, and you're just like constantly being called all the time, and we're just gonna have like you with an AI agent, really, really like putting in hours, and you're working 100-hour weeks, and you're not getting paid for that or whatever. I was like, if tech gets too crazy for me, like I'm going to leave. Like I'll be out. What, like, do you have any insights into that? Like maybe it's just changed jobs or something for somebody who has become like, I'm not the example, but like, my buddy is like an active example. I've thought about it after he kind of said it, but like if someone's become like, I don't know, angry or burnt out really is probably what the word is in a job. Like, do you take a break? Do you like try like do that exit strategy? Like you said, like, do you have any like insights into that?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that we're people, so there can be a lot of things going on, and it may not always be work related. I have had points in time where I've been depressed from breakups or like hardship in life, and it's made me dislike my work. I still show up, I still deliver. It's like I work through it. So I'd really have those hard questions because when you're unhappy, I don't tend to think it stays at the office. I tend to think it impacts your whole life, which is probably what your friend's going through, where he's like, hey, I don't like my job, which makes me not like my life because it's like, but I would also, the same is true. Like if there's something about your life that really is impacting you, then start thinking about it. What you may like, but what may be the problem in his circumstances, maybe he's overextended himself and maybe like he gets paid. I've known a few people who get paid really good money, but they just have overextended themselves. They have $7,000 a month mortgages and like, yeah, they do hate their job because they're broke all the time. They're house poor, right? Like there's things
Right,
that
right.
are going on that can impact that. And so I'd have that question: is your health where it needs to be, right? I've had things where my health has impacted my mental health, and my physical health has impacted my mental health. Now, if you're truly in a position where you've answered these questions and you go, you know what, this isn't for me, I would first consider like try something different within the field. You've invested some time and effort into this. Some of those other items I mentioned, being a product owner, change specialties. So like maybe you've been front end, go to back end. And you know what? You might part of what the hard discussion with yourself and your spouse, the new house, like real shit is happening, right? When you say like, hey, I'm leaving my $150,000 a year tech job because I want to give I just had a friend deal with this with recruiting. He's a recruiter and he's like, I can't do recruiting anymore. And then he started a clothing brand company, and nothing really happened with it. He tried to do social media and tried to get, and then a year and a half later, he went back and he's much happier. He's just like, oh, I just need a break. Sometimes you just need a break. Like sometimes you need something different. Go on sabbatical. Try a different title. If you're an engineer, try being a manager. Like figure it out. It could be the workplace. It could be external stuff. I think it's going to be on a case by case basis, but everything's a two-way door also. So don't think that you can't make a decision and back out. I think one of the things that I've probably have done successful is quitting in general. Like I'm more than happy to try things, which is why I'm a successful quitter. Is there's sometimes I try things like we have this concept, and I've ranted on like YouTube many times about this, where there's this concept, especially in like American society, that you are not allowed to quit things. Like you're just like you're a quitter, right? That's what you'd hear. Don't be afraid to try something and be like, it's not for me. I've had this with colleagues that I've worked with who are brilliant engineers management has come to them, say, hey, we think you'd be an excellent manager. There's a reason that they do a 6-month trial period on managers. It's so that you can figure out if it's for you or not. Like,
Right.
and sometimes it's okay to say no. Like I'll ask candidates questions that like, just to get them, like one of my favorite questions I ask a candidate when they have solved a problem perfectly is there anything you would change? And like, I want them to say no because we're afraid to say no. We're afraid to like, drop things. So be willing to understand that things are two-way doors and you can try things and quit things and go back to things. And like that, it's not an all or nothing, which we live in this like black and white mentality that doesn't really exist. And it's something I would encourage your friend to kind of think about as well, is that like pump the brakes for a second, take a holistic view and say, hey, maybe I don't hate my job. Maybe I don't like this particular job, but maybe I don't hate my career. And are there other external things? And if I was going to try something different, what are the 3 things I would try? Try them and understand you can always go back.
That's super interesting because like you're right, like there's so many times where like we as a society will just like commit to something and then just never give it up. I mean, I was talking to my friend and this is much lower stakes than like, trying different, a different position, a different job, a different career, whatever. But I was talking to my friend and I said, when I start a video game, I finish it. And I was like, some of these games are 100 hours. It'll take me months and months and months. And I'm like, and I hate it. Like I'm like 10 hours in and I'm like, jeez, like, why am I doing this? And it's like, well, I don't want to be a quitter. Like I need that green check at the end, kind of that fake green check. So I'm just going to keep going. And it's like, again, lower stakes. So it's kind of funny, but it's like, I've had a talk with him like recently because I also have a gaming podcast and I was talking to him about it and he was just like, why do you like spend all this time doing this? And I was like, I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like, adversity, and that this can apply to the workplace, right? Where it's like, maybe it's like the human reward system where like sometimes you have to go through adversity to get that payoff. But I'm like, this is also my entertainment. Like, why am I like trying to go through and like some adversity in my entertainment time? Like maybe I'll just, try this for 5 hours. If I don't like it, I'm just going to leave. Like, or if I get bored and I like the first 5 hours, I'm just going to leave after that.
Yeah, and this goes a bit back to my point about seasons. Is sometimes there are points in times that things work for you now that don't work for you 5 years from now, and sometimes there's people in your life that are just, I forget which comedian said this. I found it really profound, but he's like, sometimes there's people that come into your life that are simply there for a period of time to help get you to the next, season.
Right.
And I found that very profound. And, for me, I can think of like, I put a lot of emphasis on like relationships, like partners. Like I'm somebody who is like searching for the love of my life, ladies, throwing it out there. Holler at me. No, but like each time I've had a relationship fail, there's been growth that has happened. I've moved on to the next stage, and my career, I've leveraged that for fuel to move on to other things. But it's okay to say, you know what, there's something that worked for me for a time, and it doesn't work for me anymore, and I need to start thinking. And then now it's like, okay, well, what's next? And it kind of, you change a little bit of your mentality of like, why would I rather do something I dislike just to say I did it? And that's not to say that you're quitting because it's hard. It's okay to say, you know what, this isn't for me. Like you tried it, it didn't work out. Like I have for years been trying to like spicy food, but like I'm like the biggest gringo when it comes to food that there is. And I've just given up. That's it. I cannot like eat spicy food. I've tried to increase my palate, and I don't even really understand why, other than like I feel like I enjoy food. I would like to enjoy spicy food, but I don't. And like that's just the harsh reality. And mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms either. But like for years I was forcing myself to go through this like fire pain in my mouth because I thought I should. And like, we all have these small things, but what ends up happening is we apply them to big things, and that's when the problem becomes, oh, I just spent 100 hours on this game that wasn't fun. Like the whole point of gaming is to be fun and enjoy. And like, I played a game years ago where it was like I was just waiting for it to get better. It was White Knight Chronicles. It's a Japanese RPG. Terrible game. Terrible. Graphics were great, and like, but that was it. The gameplay sucked. The story was whatever. And like an hour in, I was like, oh, it's kind of crappy, but maybe it gets better. 10 hours in, I was like, this is still shit. Like, and so, but I was like, oh, I gotta play it through. There's the sunk cost fallacy is where like a lot of this stuff ends up is I've invested time, I need to see it out. Have a point of no return. Like people have rock bottoms and they keep digging. No. Set your rock bottom and stop digging. Stop suffering and figure out like where your pain threshold is, and then be willing to say it's time to pivot.
I think that's really wise advice. Like 100%. Like, I mean, like to bring it back to my friend, like it totally makes sense for him to, pump the brakes, do a bit of an analysis on himself, see if he wants to, transition, go on sabbatical, try, just take a vacation. I mean, I don't even know if this guy goes on vacation, like take a vacation, even see what happens kind of thing. It totally makes sense. And like, I mean, I know like, like when we were talking about, gaming, it's like lower stakes, but those principles apply, right? It's like, absolutely. It's like the sunken cost fallacy where it's like, I paid $50, $80, whatever, or in Canada now, like $110 for a video game. It's like I need to play this for the 100 hours, like you were saying. And it's like, yeah, but like, is 100 hours worth $110 to you? Like, Probably not, because like not only am I going to work during the day, and the evening I'll boot this thing up, and then I've just wasted 2 hours each night trying to get through this thing just for like that check mark. And it's like, we don't have to do that. Like, we can pivot, we can make the decision to adjust.
Yeah, and in the video game example, like you can go buy two, let's say you have to buy two more video games. Now you spent $300, and like you just think about the answer is like, hey, would I rather have spent $300 and had 200 hours of enjoyment, or $100 and 200 hours of pain? Like it's like the answer is pretty simple. It like hits you in the face, and like this can go for anything. So like I particularly don't like lifting weights. I try to, and so I do an hour on the treadmill, and like I don't particularly like running, but I've found that if I can do the incline, I can burn a ton of calories, and that's like what works for me. That's the thing that I can go 5-6 days a week, and I found the source of physical exercise pain that I enjoy and that I like. And sometimes you have to be willing to test some things, try some things, quit some things for you to figure out what you like.
100%. And I almost feel like, as a note, I'm kind of critical of the traditional school system, but the traditional school system it tries to drill into us like the black and white, I feel like, where they're like, you better make a proper decision right now. Like, you're 16 or 17 or whatever. You better make a proper decision right now for the rest of your life, because you're going to go to college, university. And it's kind of like, I'm like, I just got my driver's license and I have to like choose right now. And like, that's it. I'm never going to be able to transition. I'm never going to be able to change careers, try a different job, do something. It's like, I better make a good choice. I don't even make good choices in my regular life,
Yeah, and everyone can have a different path. Like to the point about my podcast is like the self-taught or not. Eric's the not. He's the computer science, bachelor's in the college system. That's what works for him. That's like, I was in school. I changed my major a bunch. The second I dropped out of college was the second everything in my life started like taking off, because that just wasn't a system that worked for me. It was something that I just kept on taking the pain for like 5-6 years, and like until I realized like this is like not for me, and I need to do something that does work for me. So everyone's different and unique, and try and figure out what works best for you.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think this is like a good time to just transition over into like something that's a little bit different, but it's something that a lot of people are like kind of trying for the first time. Just a lot of people are like transitioning into this career path or whatever, and it's AI. And I want to get your thoughts on AI, because I feel like, I mean, I just told you before off air that we had just recorded an episode, and my Mike, like my business partner, he was saying that he's struggling with AI, and that he thinks he's using it too much and this and that. And I was telling him, I was like, yeah, but think about all the people that like have transitioned into AI, or like trying it for the first time, or like whatever, because I mean, it's so new. Like everyone's trying it for the first time the last couple of years at most, really, unless you're the people that were building it in the background, of which there weren't like hundreds and hundreds, or not thousands, I guess. But anyway, the point of the matter is, what are your thoughts on AI when it comes to like web development and like, learning how to code or being an engineer, because, and this is something that I saw on X recently, is that, like junior developers, some people are saying, I don't need junior developers, I'm just going to replace them by agents. And it's sort of like, oh, uh-oh. So it's like, or should people be like trying to transition to AI stuff? Like, what's your general thoughts on AI right now?
Yeah, I've been hearing about the sky is falling in software engineering since before I was an engineer. And so like it's definitely been something that I think what I can say is the motivation is there. Like engineers are going to be the most expensive resource a company has. And I have no doubt that organizations will go and try and replace engineers. But that would be the mentality most people have. I think where people are losing the context here is they're not really replacing jobs so much as increasing productivity of existing engineers. And so you end up in a spot where there may be less job openings, but you're getting more done. So you're going to see faster growth in companies in general than we've ever seen before. And we're starting to see that, right? As far as people just starting out in their career, I think where a lot of people probably are going to struggle is when something gives you an answer that you don't understand. I would love to know what the like Copilot stats are on how many people say accept all changes. I bet it's like 99%. Like I bet it's like
Right.
how many people read that? Like I've used some of it in the past to write some code. I don't write too much code nowadays because I'm doing other things. Um, but when I do, I leverage it and then I read it, I do it, and it's cool. I see the issues or I don't see the issues. It's sometimes it's very evident when someone is a engineer and like a traditional engineer, I'll use that term, versus a vibe coding engineer, where it's like they they don't necessarily know what to look for. They don't necessarily know what the edge cases are going to be. And the reality is we've had so many things blow. Like they just had some $1 billion startup blow up because it wasn't actually AI doing it. They had like 1,000 engineers in India in the background. Was it?
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and this is a company that had hundreds of millions of dollars of investments and stuff like that. So I do think the motivation's there. I think it's a tool to increase your productivity. But I've just been hearing about the skies falling as engineers for literally ever. I mean, they've been trying to build drag and drop like HTML stuff for like decades. Like, and
That's
there's
a
a
fair point.
reason that that's not there. Like, there's a reason not every site is a WordPress site. Businesses have unique use cases and complex use cases that, when you're building a SaaS product, there are going to be some things that AI can figure out. It can understand what a modal is. Fine, it can do that. Now, is it going to understand how to sync that with your WebSockets? Is it going to understand the SEO that's needed? Is it going to understand the roles and members that are there? Is it going to understand the convergence strategy of how this needs to show up on this page? Like our pages are not static; they're all dynamic nowadays.
Right.
Um, and you can't even get a search engine to properly do SEO on dynamic pages without getting rendered on the server. And so like there's these obvious gaps in where yes, you can have it solve for very basic use cases, but that's not what you're going to get paid for. Like you're not getting paid for basic use cases. So ultimately, I think where it lands right now, until like we're at a point where like agents are actually doing something other than like summarizing data, is it's a tool to increase your productivity.
What do you say about the junior devs specifically? Because you were saying, and you're correct in that like engineers are really expensive. It's a huge part of a company's budget, a large part of their expenses, of course, the wages of the engineers and acquiring them and training them. And so, I mean, because like I was talking, I was thinking of like I have a friend who's in the creative space, and he was going to go become a director, like a movie director. And he was telling me that like the common path for them is that you basically work for either peanuts or free, hanging around on sets, helping out stagehand. I forget exactly what they call them. There's a specific production assistant, maybe something like that. But he said like if you want to do this career, it's like you really have to put in a lot of work for free or very cheap, and then have like a side hustle or a side job on the side, barely make it, hopefully get your foot in the door, and then boom, you're in. And I don't think it's that bad. Like obviously, like that's a far cry right now. Like where it's like junior engineers are obviously junior developers are still getting paid. But do you see a future in which like it's going to be hard pressed to be a junior specifically because it's going to be like we don't want to hire anybody. Like these agents are good enough. Where it's like like I don't want to bring someone in here for 75K, 50K even, right? And like train them up, because it'll be 3 years before they're seniors. So like let that be someone else's problem, and we'll just have AI agents do everything except for at the senior level.
No, I actually think it's going to be the opposite. My thought process with that is pretty simple. Is first off, nobody wants to hire junior engineers in general. Like I think I think every junior engineer that's out there that's applying for their first job will tell you it's one of the hardest things they've ever done. One of the hardest things I ever did was get my first job. Um, and part of it is a ramp up period. If you need to learn a code base, AI is going to make it much quicker for you. When I go and I say, hey, I need to like, where is like, I understand my current product and the app and how it works. I don't necessarily know where all the files are. We get 10,000 files. Like it's like
Right.
where is this code? Where is the logic for this? AI will get you, instead of me spending 2 hours understanding the code, I can get AI to do a summary of it and figure it out. So it's going to allow junior engineers to ramp up much quicker. It's going to allow them to be much more effective. And by that same token, companies are going to be investing less into to this unproven asset. So I can understand the thought because we tend to like think of the worst case scenario, but I actually think it's going to be the exact opposite where you'll see more people who are going to get more opportunities to write code because of AI than they were before. And that will allow them to get their foot in the door quicker. It will allow for people who have non-traditional tech backgrounds to understand coding quicker. It also present a challenge where there will be people who just copy pasta what's there much more effectively than they were copy pasting off Stack Overflow 5 years ago. And
Right.
like, there'll be challenges with that too.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I mean you're mentioning that like the very first thing I thought of when you said like, oh, it's a productivity machine, AI is a productivity machine, and I was thinking, well, yeah, it's a productivity machine, so now instead of 100 engineers, you're going to have 50. But then you said, well, the amount of product that a company's going to fire out and of course charge for and make money with is going to increase, and therefore you may need that like those 50 back, right? It's like, okay, that's interesting because I never ever hear anybody when they talk about sort of the doom and gloom talk about like the business end. They're always like, oh, that's it. If these engineers are 50% more efficient, then 50% of the team's gone. Bye. It's like, yeah, but they're more efficient. So like hypothetically, the company would make more money.
Yeah, no, any business that is successful is going to it's compounding. And so as you increase, more money, you're going to hire more and it's going to happen. And you may like the biggest bottleneck I have right now is not work. It's finding engineers. Like it's like finding senior engineers that meet what we're looking for. That's the bottleneck. And so as we go and we increase our productivity of our current engineers doesn't necessarily replace the engineers that we need. And so I think people forget that it's a full circle with the sales, with the money, with the product. There's always going to be. I tell you right now, if you're at a company, here's a quick rule of thumb. Here's a little story about the one time I got laid off. I went to a music company and I was building this web app for them, and I cleared out the backlog. I was laid off 2 days later. Like there's nothing in the backlog, and the reason for it is if you're at a company that doesn't have anything to build, any direction they're going, chances are it's not a successful product, and it doesn't matter how productive you are. But if you're at something that has momentum, if you're at something that's successful, all these companies, all these tech companies, they know exactly they have more work than they have people to do it, and so the AI is going to allow them to get more work to hopefully build more teams that increases the sales that they can then spin up more teams and allow more engineers who now's value has actually increased because instead of being able to deliver, let's say, one project, they can deliver 1.5 this year or 1.2, whatever it is, and your productivity increases and your value increases because you're delivering more value. Like, I think what people kind of forget is that businesses look at the total cost of employees and the value that they bring over some period of time, right? So let's say I cost my company $500,000 a year and they think that I'm going to bring $1 million worth of value. That is a trade you're going to make 100% of the time. Like you're like, I'm going to have a 2x on my ROI. And so let's say next year you bring 1.5 million because you're 50% more effective. You may not get a 50% raise, but now if the market's there and the opportunity's there, it's very easy to see how you might get a $100,000 raise because now you've provided in the last year $400,000 more value or like whatever
Right.
numbers you want to use. And that's what AI really unlocks.
That's super interesting. I think that this is like a good place to kind of end the show a little bit, just because it's like, the people listening, we've kind of gone through the phases of like, getting hired and this and that, but it's like, this is a bit of a hopeful step because every time you talk about careers these days, it's like undercut by, yeah, but AI is just going to take it. AI is just going to take it. But it's like, you're right. It's a full circle. It's something that, kind of comes a full circle, the marketing, the money, like your value, offering more money, whatever, the whole thing. And no one ever talks about that. Everyone is very, I suppose, like one dimensional, and myself included. Like when I look at this, where I'm like, oh, that's it. AI's here. Where's my check every month, government, or something,
Yeah. And like that's not to say that it's not going to disrupt things, but it's going to be a net positive. And so I like to think of farming as a perfect example. So like 100 years ago, something like 97% of people were farmers. Like
Right.
that, like, and it wasn't like, oh, hey, we're all now unemployed and like life goes on. It's like, no, what ended up happening is society was able to allocate more resources to be more productive. Instead of just focusing on how to eat, we could do other things. And there might be stuff like that that happens with AI where like, oh, all of a sudden now, maybe these gig jobs with, like car deliveries and stuff like that, less common. People have other gig jobs or have stuff, and that's a part of society that grows as that's a net gain, but may impact a certain group of individuals. But as far as software is concerned, I think we're I think we'll both be dead before AI is writing all the software. Personally, so like I just I think that's my personal take. I'm much more optimistic, and I think people have been thinking that the kind of the last 2 decades, people have been saying like, why go into software? It's all going to take our jobs, and I've seen nothing but the chart go like stocks go up type of thing. And until I see like different, I can't imagine anything different.
And realistically, too, with that 20 years, I mean, many people could have retired as well. Like, you know what I mean? It's like everything's gonna go for crap. Everything's gonna go for crap. But then it's like these people are just like, yeah, but they're just working. Then they retire while the people are still being like, don't do it. It's like, I did it. I'm done. I'm retired. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. People have been saying like it's the end of an era and have had full careers into retirement. And it's, if anything, people are going to have better careers and they can do more and have more impact and hopefully make more money down the road and more opportunity. You can have people that go and can vibe code something out from like tech support. And now all of a sudden tech you have strong product knowledge on something, and now you can become a junior engineer because the ramp up period, instead of being a year and a half, might be 3 months, where now
Right.
you're studying code and you can start writing code. And yeah, maybe your pay is going to be on the lower end to start until you're a senior engineer, but that was always the case. Like I
Right.
paid dog shit in my first couple of jobs compared to what now, and you know. But AI is going to allow those opportunities to exist that didn't exist before, with much more ease.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think that's a great like positive outlook for people, because I mean we have so many AI episodes. I mean, the amount of AI content and like, chatter and worry and like fear, I guess it reminds me of the inescapable Web3 / crypto boom. I think that was during COVID, where it was like everyone's like Web3 is going to take over, like there's not going to be any auth systems other than like crypto wallets, and everything's going to be decentralized, or this or that. I was like, is it? Like, okay. And then crypto, crashes to some extent, or like a lot, I think. I don't really remember now. And then it's just like, oh, okay, well, Web3's around, but I guess it
Yeah,
wasn't the end all be all.
it's never going to be, I very often these things take much longer than people expect, and crypto is a great example. Has crypto disrupted something? Sure. You know what? I would say Bitcoin has probably taken away some of gold market share where people use it as a store of value. Stable coins are something that have taken off a bit that allow people to do commerce that might be in other mediums. NFTs were here and then they're gone. People learned that was a terrible idea, right? Like, so things are gonna
Yeah.
things are gonna happen. But it's very rarely a big sweeping thing, and not in the ways that you think, and not as big all at once. So I think the AI wave of they took our jobs will not be something that's going to happen overnight. I think if anything, it's going to be a positive thing. But if it's not, and I'm wrong, I've been wrong a lot about things, is it'll be a slow thing, which people have plenty of time to figure out what they want to do next.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I mean, like, these things do come and go quickly. I mean, we are in a couple of years of it now, so I don't think AI is going to go anywhere. It's like, unlike, I mean, crypto and that didn't go anywhere, but it certainly left the zeitgeist, let's just say. And NFTs certainly left the zeitgeist. But AI seems to be kind of everywhere, and I'm sure it'll calm down, because like every app from like, hey, you like recipes? Well, why don't you have an AI agent? It's like, what? Reading a bullet list here. Like, I don't need a.
Yeah, and like there's been jobs that have already been impacted. Call centers is a great example where they go and they have AI agents. So they're like, hey, if you run a product or some service or e-commerce thing, you probably get the same 200, 300, 400 questions from your customer base. Like, there's only so much you can do. Then all of a sudden, instead of hiring somebody, yeah, it's going to take that job. And now now the AI agent's going to make a more effective and efficient company that they can spend those resources on other things that provide more value. And same thing with the self-driving cars. So it's going to have an impact and disrupt certain things. And I understand the incentive, but it's going to also open up other opportunities like robotics and now I'm going on the deep end. I'm about to bring it up like universal basic income,
Oh yeah.
whatnot, which with like robotics and stuff like taking jobs. Like, oh well, like people are going to need to maintain those items. There's going to be engineering roles that's going to open up other opportunities elsewhere. Not everything like this idea that robots are going to basically do every job in the world overnight is like kind of silly to me. Although they are getting, I don't know if you've seen any of the Boston Dynamics stuff. They can like break dance now, and
I've seen some of that. Yeah.
yeah, it's cool stuff. So like I get the fear, but that's another thing. People are like, this is all happening at once. We've been talking about self-driving cars for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these things are going to disrupt things. It's not going to happen overnight. We still like have cashiers, for God's sakes. Like we have self-checkout stands that, yeah, they've taken some cashier jobs. Okay, great. There's less cashier jobs. People are going to work other things. But I'm very positive on the AI outlook, mainly because I see it every day. I see it in my own productivity. I see it in my team's productivity, my company's productivity, and I see the impact that it's having on the engineering org as a whole. And I also see why companies are leveraging it. And the ones who aren't, those are going to be the companies that really suffer because they're going to get left behind. And same thing with engineers. If you're a senior engineer or junior engineer and you're not leveraging AI in some form or fashion, you're really going to kill your productivity and your learning curve like quite a bit. You're able to figure out what APIs you need to use, what browser APIs, what like performance bottlenecks might be instead of doing all this research. Sometimes they can analyze it and find these things that we already know so that you can move on to the harder problems that AI can't solve.
That's a really good point too, is like, you don't need to be reinventing the wheel with your learning. Like you don't have to go and be like, what's a variable? And then like have to go and like seek out, 3-4 guides, go on Stack Overflow, this and that. You could just ask AI, what's a variable? Why do we use it? What can it be used for? And then it'll just tell you. And you can even say to it, hey, I don't understand what you said. I'm a complete beginner. Explain it to me easier. And it'll just do it. Like,
yeah. And like, I wish that existed because I remember speaking back to that weather app, crying on the weekends just because I didn't understand what an API was. Like, I didn't know what I was looking for, what it was. And like, I finally had that aha moment on Monday after I've been like bawling my eyes out and I read 40 articles. It's like, sometimes you just, I don't even know if I could at that time, if I would even be able to ask ChatGPT, like, what is this? So sometimes you actually have a little bit of knowledge to even prompt these things. But the path to becoming an engineer has never been easier for those who are willing to work at it. And the job opportunities have never been greater because you can provide the most value than you ever could before in the quickest way.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Some hope for people that listen to the show. I know a lot of them are juniors, are in training, are looking to get jobs. So a great little ending, a bit of positivity, like I said, for them. But Dylan, thank you very much for being on the show. I'd love for you to take the floor now. You can, share what you'd like, plug what you'd like, personal, professional, charities, all of it, all of the above, whatever. And I will put any of the links and whatever else in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll do a shameless promo here. I do some mentoring on Mentor Cruise. It's paid. I help a lot of engineers get their first engineering job, jump over to get pay raises, things like that. So a little selfish promo. The other thing I'd like to call out is Persevere. Persevere is a volunteer organization that I've worked with in the past. They help convicts who are, or I should say inmates. I'm not sure if convicts is an offensive term. Apologize if that's the case. They help inmates that are in prison that are learning to code without the internet, and they set them up with jobs outside of that at like a consulting agency they're a part of. So I think that's a good cause. So if you are a engineer and you want to answer some of their questions, I have found it to be a very rewarding thing. So I would encourage people to check that out.
Excellent. And like I said, links to those will be on htmlallthethings.com in the show notes. Thanks once again. This episode was great and hope to have you on in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, anytime.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that interview as much as we did, but unfortunately, it is time to end. Before we do so, just a quick thank you to all of our $3 tier patrons. You can support episodes like this if you do so. If you'd like to do so, you can do so on patreon.com/HTML all the things. And many thanks to those $3 tier patrons. Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mossler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And remember, you can get up to 20% off a Scrimba Pro subscription. You can do so with the link that will be in the show description and in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And full details about that link and that discount will be in those show notes, on htmlallthethings.com. And last but not least, if I could speak today, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Oh, and actually, I did forget to tell you, but I already told you once. This episode is powered by CodeRabbit. You can go and net yourself some AI-powered code reviews and cut down on that code review time. You can do so via the link in the show description or in the show notes as well. Get yourself a 14-day free trial. It's just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account and no credit card required. Go and check that out. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on. And this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.